Hey guys, welcome back to Lift Up Culture. Los Angeles, like most cities in this nation, is experiencing a homeless crisis. More and more people are living in the streets or in their cars because they can either no longer afford to live in their homes, or certain circumstances have now brought them to a position of homelessness. Now, I think as a society, we have an unfair stigma of these people that they want to be homeless, or they want to live in tents in the park, and they want to live under bridges and freeways and at bus stops. And I do believe that holds true for a small percentage of the homeless people. But unfortunately, we've taken that general view and applied it to all those who are homeless. Los Angeles has a population of around 4 million people. Now, the city has had a very hard time trying to figure out how to solve this problem. You've heard a lot of things about taking them all and putting them at a facility miles away from the city. That didn't work. You hear about shelters popping up in communities where people don't want them, so that didn't work, right? Not in my backyard. And so I was very excited when I learned that Los Angeles had created its first tiny home village for the homeless population. And I was even more excited to learn that it was in my own hometown of where I grew up in North Hollywood. I remember as kids, my brothers and I would spend a lot of summers at the park, which is nearby the tiny home village that was just built. And growing up, when we would go to the park, we'd see homeless people and we were frightened by them, almost very cautious of them. We kind of grew up learning that be careful with the homeless people, stay away from them. And we kind of just had this fear of homeless people. But the reality is a lot of homeless people start out like people that we know, maybe even you and I. And for some reason, either bad luck or a series of bad decisions have brought him to a position of homelessness. So when I found out about the project, I contacted the organization that's handling the day-to-day operations, which is Hope of the Valley. And I just said, hey, I'm very interested in the project. Would you please allow me to come and take a tour of the facility and see all the good work that's being done there? And fortunately, they liked me enough to invite me over and to take a tour of the place. And I was able to meet with a few staff members there who were very nice, very helpful, very informative, and who just have a heart to help people. And so they gave me a tour of the place. I was able to meet with a few of the tenants there and hear their stories. None of them wanted to be on film, understandably, but just hearing them and how they got into such a position was very enlightening. And it gave me a different perspective on how we see homeless people in our cities. Now, the tiny home village sits on a triangular piece of land that's wedged right in between a residential area and the North Hollywood Park. In fact, the village sits just behind new residential towers that are going up next to the subway station. So you have this homeless shelter juxtaposed with these new residential towers of people who can afford to live in these nice, new, expensive apartments, contrasted with people who just want to get permanent housing. The village itself is surrounded by a white fence that you can't necessarily see directly into. And also at the entrance of the village is a check-in area where they have 24-hour security and lockers specific to the tenants for items that aren't allowed inside the village. Inside the village, the tenants cannot bring in alcohol or drugs or any sort of paraphernalia, so they can keep it outside in their own locker and it not being confiscated as long as they don't bring it in. Now, the organization that's handling the operations, Hope of the Valley, they have a really great program there with program rules designed to help the tenants get them into a more permanent housing situation. This tiny home village is designed to be only intermittent housing just until they find a permanent spot. But the houses themselves have everything that one would need to live. The tiny homes are equipped with electricity. They have their own air conditioner, lighting, heating, even a wall outlet for them to plug in their own devices. Now, each tiny home does have max capacity of 2 people. Because of the pandemic, only 1 tenant is allowed per tiny home. Unless you are a couple, then 2 people would be allowed inside each tiny home. They do have designated tiny homes that are ADA compliant for those who are disabled in wheelchairs. Chris, one of the case managers there who helped the tenants get into permanent housing, sat down with me for an interview to talk about the facility resources and the day-to-day operations at the site.
My name is Christopher Hernandez. I'm one of the case managers here. I help our residents look for jobs, residential areas, identification cards if they need that, social security cards. We actually have 1 through 39 tiny homes here. 75 beds. We have a 3.5-mile radius catch around this area that we're at. So anybody that's homeless, sleeping in their tents, vehicles, anything like that. We have an outreach program that goes out. They try to talk to the individuals to see if this is something that would benefit them, if this is something that they want to do. Not everybody agrees. A lot of the residents here, like you've seen, you know, they're walking around, they say hi to everybody. They do have dogs. A lot of them do have support animals here as well. And in the back, we actually have a little dog park. We do have showers, bathrooms. We have a laundry to do, you know, for them to do the laundry. We provide them with meals 3 times a day, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And then we have the case managers here that are Monday through Friday. We have hygiene monitors and janitors that are working 24 hours a day. So we have everybody working around the clock, cleaning the houses. If somebody does end up leaving or moving out, we end up disinfecting the whole tiny home. For now, it's a 90-day program. What we're trying to do is help them come here for, you know, a little bit around 90 days to kind of help them get out of that funk that they have out in the streets, try to help them with ID cards, try to get them housing, general relief, food stamps, anything of that. And 90 days we're expecting or helping them at least have a permanent job or have housing.
Now, as I spent my time at the tiny home village, I just began to think, why can't this be a new format on dealing with homelessness in our cities? Albeit I understand that a project like this does have costs associated with it, that maybe a big shelter that can house a lot of homeless people at once may not have. But wouldn't it be great if we can see a lot more of these tiny home villages pop up where homeless people actually want to go to? It's important to remember that homeless people begin to develop their own sense of community in their homelessness. That's why you see a lot of them hang out at the same spots, be it on the side of the freeway or tucked away in some corner of the park or along certain bus routes. They want to be in that space because they either feel familiar with that space or they feel like they belong in that space. And so taking people out of their community and transplanting them in some shelter miles away or outside of the city just isn't going to work. They want to be in a space that they feel like they belong to. So I'm hopeful that in Los Angeles that we can see a lot more of these tiny home villages pop up and help alleviate the situation of homelessness for those that wish to pursue more permanent housing. So I hope this video has helped you look at homelessness in a different light. Not all of them out there are drug addicted crazies who just want to live in the streets and yell and be shirtless and naked and all these crazy things that we see homeless people do out there. In fact, a lot of them are just down on their luck and have made a series of bad decisions that have brought into this position. But that's not any reason for us to look down on them as less than. In fact, these people need just as much help as you and I do. When Christ came to die on the cross for our sins, he came for everybody, not just me and not just you, not just those that are healthy or that are sane. He came for all of us. And so I encourage you to also look at these people the way Christ looks at us, just as valuable. All right, guys, I hope you enjoyed this video. Until next time, make sure to like and subscribe.